The Angry Chicken is a production of Amove TV. Bookmark amove.tv for more gaming and esports shows. The Angry Chicken is directly supported by listeners like you via patreon.com/TAC.
Everyone, get in here! Ready for action! I've got the beast in my sight.
A podcast about Hearthstone, Heroes of Warcraft. This is the Angry Chicken.
Greetings and welcome back, everyone. This is the Angry Chicken. I am Garrett Weinzerl. I am also joined today by Willie Dills Gregory and Jocelyn Moffat. But I'm going to steamroll right past all of that because we have a special guest today joining us. You may know him because he won 6 World Series of Poker bracelets, or possibly because he won 2 World Poker Tour Championship titles. We know him because he's a Hearthstone fan, and he actually tweets at the show sometimes, and that kind of freaked us out. We got talking, and now here he is. Daniel Negreanu, thank you for joining us today.
In that intro, you forgot one key note. A Hearthstone legend.
That's right. That's right.
Like a big
He's a legend player, ladies and gentlemen.
It's a lead up because we're gonna talk to you a little bit about that here in just a sec.
I introduced myself that way. I went to the gym and saw my friends the next morning and go, "Hi, my name's Daniel. I'm a Hearthstone legend."
Fantastic.
I do the same thing too. It's a running joke on the show at this point.
I was about to say, are you going to join?
I have a fellow legend player on the show. Finally.
Oh my God.
Firebat and Chalky and some of those guys, but now I feel like we got a real Hearthstone legend on the show.
So you're going to join Dills on the rest of the show by starting your reply to anything we're talking about with as a legend player.
Yes, exactly.
Fantastic.
As a legend player, Rogue is stupid.
Yes.
I agree with Jocelyn on that one.
Good Jocelyn gets it. Yep.
Which, by the way, my welcome bundle, Van Cleef.
Mine too.
Wow, you got trolled.
Yep.
Yeah, I got Van Cleef as well, or as I put it, 800 dust, because I already have Van Cleef, so it was just 800 dust. But hey, that's fine. That's okay. Before we dive into this thing, I want to remind our listeners that this episode is sponsored by Harrys.com. So you should go to Harrys.com right now because they make fantastic razors, and we actually have a new offer for everyone. They are Harrys.com. They're so darn confident that you're going to love their razors that you can actually go to Harrys.com right now, sign up for a free trial set. You'll get a razor, a 5-blade cartridge, and a shaving gel. All you have to do is pay shipping, and you'll get all that jazz just for the cost of shipping. And if you use the code TAC, not only will you support the show in the process, but you'll get the aftershave balm for punching in that code. So we appreciate Harrys.com for supporting us and keeping Dills and I's neck beards in check.
Mm-hmm. I just shaved right before the show, and I got the balm on too. I'm smelling nice, man. I had to get ready to pick up my puppy today, so I gotta look good.
Super smooth.
Awesome. Well, we are joined by a guest today, and Daniel, it's your first time on the show, which means we have to quiz you, or we have to talk to you about your life and Hearthstone and things. So, as mentioned, you're quite well known for being a very well accomplished professional poker player. But what is your overall gaming resume? Have you always been into competitive games in general?
I mean, I've always liked video games, but I'm like old school. I mean, Super Mario Brothers. I like games where you press run, jump, or shoot. Simple. Like the games of today, it's like I feel like they've passed me by and they're very, very confusing. So my sort of foray into Hearthstone didn't come from any sort of competitive gaming background. It came from one night in Monte Carlo, them talking about this game on the table, saying that it had the most variables in terms of strategic options ahead of No Limit Hold'em and chess. So I thought, interesting. Yeah. So I gave it a try.
Cool. Now, were you aware at that point that guys like Elke had been playing Hearthstone and stuff? Or was this the first time you were hearing about it?
I'd heard about it a few times, right?
Yeah.
But I never played it. And literally that night, it was in Monte Carlo. There was a party to go to at 9 p.m. I started playing at around 8 p.m., just got out of the shower, and I was like, okay, I'll play a couple more games and I'll go to the party at 9. At about 4:30 a.m., I finally realized I'm not going to make it to this party.
That's like the best first Hearthstone story ever.
Exactly what happened. It's exactly a true story. I mean, the first time I played it, I was like, what is going on? I didn't understand it.
Mhm.
And then I watched Trump. He had these little beginner videos that sort of explain how. It's like a 10-minute video. I'm like, oh, okay. And then I learned a little bit more from there each time I played.
That's really cool to hear, because we just had a show recently. We had an email from a listener about kind of that new player experience, and you don't hear about a lot of players coming to the game anymore. Now it's been out for 2 years and in beta for a year before that, so we've been playing the game for 3 years now. We kind of forget what that feeling is like when you first come across it, and the game might not explain itself very well to someone who's not used to games like that. But yeah, Trump, that's a big shout out to Trump. That was what you went and found, was his videos. I think that he does a great job of explaining it to new players. That's cool.
I actually relive that moment every time I teach somebody new how to play, because I can't play rank 25 anymore because it doesn't happen. So just teaching them, I love doing the tutorial with them, because it's kind of fun. Like, what would you do with this? Huh? What would you do here? Oh, no, that's a mistake. It's fun, knowing, and I love to teach, so it's really fun.
I always find that they want to push the button more than they're supposed to. They always want to push the button. They're like, oh, I have 2 mana, I can push the button. I'm like, no. You play the 2 mana card you have. That's what you do. Like, push the buttons.
I think something about that comes back to our childhood days of just wanting to press every button imaginable, because Blizzard has done a fantastic job of making any button press in Hearthstone, whether you are doing your volume in the menu or hitting end turn, extremely satisfying. They've done a good job with the animation there.
The first time I saw that rocket go off, when a guy did, first time I saw that, I was blown. I saw it on the how did that even just happen right now? And then now you got to move it over so it hits just right in between the thing and the rocket goes off. So cool.
So what you're telling me is that you think poker would be made better by having a bunch of busy boxes on the table.
Yes.
All right.
Many Hearthstone.
I mean, if you watch poker, every player is fidgeting the entire game. I mean, the chip shuffling and all the things that you guys are doing. You just need little rockets to launch off, and then no more chip shuffling noises. But let's talk about poker a little bit. I've actually talked on this show in the past that I think there are quite a few skills that translate very well from poker directly to Hearthstone, but I don't think it really gets, this kind of stuff doesn't really get talked about very much. So I'd be interested to get your take on this. Once you kind of got the hang of the game, Hearthstone, were there any skills you noticed that directly translate, or at least some form of them kind of translate directly from poker to Hearthstone?
Yes, and massively so.
Okay.
If you think about the best online poker players in the world, what they do is they study statistics and probability of different situations. Like what is my best case scenario in this case, in that case. Hearthstone's not much different in terms of, you have 2 or 3 different possible plays. You have to figure out, okay, this play's fine, this play's pretty good, but this one is 1% better than the other 2. And the best players are going to know that. What I love about Hearthstone, which I think they make they're so far ahead of the game, is once you figure out exactly what the right play is in certain situations, every 3 months they add new cards. So it totally it changes, what the right play was, because now there's new problems that need to be solved. And as far as poker and Hearthstone, even in poker, the first thing you got to learn is what do I have? What are my cards? How do they match? In Hearthstone, you're like, okay, it's turn 2. I have a card in my hand that's 2. Put that one out. Okay, it's turn 3. I have a 3, so put that out. And that's basically what do I have? The second phase in poker is, what does my opponent have, right? What does my opponent have, and how do I play against that? In Hearthstone, it's the same thing. So you're playing a mage. It's one of the first things you learn. It's okay, turn 7. Uh-oh, if I have a bunch of minions out there that are 4 or less health, boom, they're all going to go somewhere. That was the first one I remember, because I played a lot of Mage. I'm like, uh-oh, turn 7, I know. But it's fun because it opens your mind up. You start with the very basic, just play your cards on curve. And then you learn what your opponents have. And then it takes that third step of, what does my opponent think I have? Or what does he think I'm about to do? And how am I going to be deceptive and fool him? And that's true in Hearthstone too.
That's a really, really succinct way to kind of sum all that up. Because I've been talking about this for a long time, that there's a lot of this skill in poker is this playing around what your opponent thinks you're supposed to be doing and concealing what your hand is. And a lot of times people don't even think about this in Hearthstone. Things like people, as they're thinking through their turn, will grab a fireball and aim it at a minion, or hover over the card that they want to play, or they'll play a turn really quickly when that's the only possible play that they have. And then you literally are just telling your opponent what is in your hand, right? And nobody thinks about this. Nobody talks about it. You just told him that you have a fireball. when you pointed it at his 6 health guy and then you didn't use it, and now he knows exactly that you have a fireball, and the whole rest of the game he's gonna, or things like concealing the fact that you have a flame strike. You ping a 5 health minion on turn 6, and the guy goes, okay, well, I guess I won't play any more minions on turn 7. Like I will do things when I'm getting really try hard. I will do things like sit there on a turn where I literally only have one play and just kind of like what I see a lot of poker players do, what I've done playing poker, just kind of wait a certain amount of time, no matter what, before I make my turn, right?
To echo that, an even better example of that, which is true with Flame Strike, is like when you're playing a hunter, if you do have Freezing Trap, and there's a guy that has like 3, there's a minion out there with 3 life, and you just ping it 1, get it down to 2, and then you just go face, and you leave the other ones alone. The guy's like, okay, so now he can totally play it. He knows 100% it's a Freezing Trap. I mean, I'm sorry.
The explosive trap. Explosive trap, yeah.
Yeah, so there's definitely like little things like that, but more so I think the comparisons really lie in the probability statistics and the analytics. I watched a guy like Tis, who before the cards come out, he has a spreadsheet that he ranks certain cards in terms of value, from 10 to 0. And then, he has to figure out ways in which they incorporate into other decks that exist and what new things. And I admire the pros who can create decks out of nothing. That's really like next Hearthstone, where you just like, because if you're new to the game and you try to put a deck together, you're not going to have a clue what you're doing. It's very, very hard to make a competent deck that can get to Legend unless you are really intelligent and, know what things will mesh together well.
Yeah, is that something, absolutely. Do you play a lot of your own decks, or are you pulling from, net decking like some of the rest of us do?
Like all of us do, Jocelyn.
Yeah, I know.
I'd say the first 6 months I played, I never net decked once. I was always creating my own decks and getting to like rank 13, 14, 12, 10 or something like that. And then I said, okay, I want to make a push to get the Legend. So I started to steal some ideas and some net decking. So today what I do is, for my main account, because I've got 2, I'm a total degen. I've got an account where I just spend all the money, and then I've got a free account where I just play it and never spend any money and try to because that way when you open a pack, you're like, oh my God, I need this card.
Yeah, you still get that feeling.
Because I have money, that's not an issue. So what I do now is on my main account, I play Standard. On my free account, I just play Wild, and on Wild, I just make up any random deck that I think might work with the cards that I have. And that's really fun, and I learn more about the game doing that. But for the Standard, I think to be competitive, I'm not good enough at this point to just create decks. So, what I'm doing now is, after I became Legend, by the way, I'm a Legend. I don't know if I mentioned that. Once I became Legend, like this month, I've been focusing on solely control decks, because I think to be next level, they're way more complicated to play. And if you want to be really good at this game, just playing an Aggro Shaman and a Warlock Zoo is not going to get you there. Those are very easy decks to play. You're going to have to learn how to play those control decks if you want to be really good.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, you can definitely do nothing but play Zoo and have very good results on the ladder forever, but you will only understand how to play that one deck, and you won't learn. Like, what I really find is when there's like a new deck that comes along, like recently the Malagos Druid has gotten really, really popular. So I just kind of forced myself to learn how to play it because I was playing against it so much. I needed to know what it felt like on the other side of things, right? So you need to kind of get yourself out of your comfort zone so that you actually understand from both sides, like which, decks are good. So speaking of like decks that you make on your own, real quick, any examples? Like what kind of themes are you going for? What, like, is there anything crazy out there that no one else has done that you've come up with that maybe worked or didn't?
Maybe, but I wanted to echo that on one thing.
Sure.
Back to one thing you said about the best way to learn how to play this game too is like when you face decks you don't know, you don't understand, you got to play them. And once you play them, now when you face them, you're like, oh wait, he has this card. This is what's going to happen. If you don't, like with Rogue, I never know what the fuck Rogue's going to do. I don't understand it. I'm like, he's just going to put that gadget stand on, then crazy shit's going to happen. He's going to keep drawing cards, and then I'm dead.
And then you just lose. Yeah.
Yeah. The first decks I like to create, I go over to Wild, and my favorite card ever in the history of the game is Sludge Belcher, because before I even understood how to play, I would put it in my Tempo Mage. I just put it in everything.
It's good. It's that good.
I put that in a Pilot Shredder, right? So now I've been playing this warrior deck in Wild, which is kind of a N'Zoth. It's a N'Zoth Grim Patron Sludge Belcher control deck.
Oh my God.
Perfect.
That sounds fantastic.
Yeah, I don't know how often I'm going to win with that deck, but it's really fun to play because they just, you just N'Zoth them, and then there's like a couple Sludge Belchers and those, I forget the one, the 2/3 with a 2/2 Death Rattle.
Oh, the new card. Oh man, I can't remember what it's called either.
Yeah, it's a taunt card. It's a 4-mana taunt card. It's 2/3, and then it comes up
And
as
it spits out a 2/2. Yeah.
Yeah.
Chad will know.
Yeah, Chad will know.
Is that the Infested Tauren?
Infested Tauren. That's the one.
There we go.
Well done.
My brain.
So, you mentioned Piloted Shredder, which is kind of one of the examples of the extra level of randomness that is present in Hearthstone as opposed to some of the other games you play, like poker. So what are your thoughts on just randomness in Hearthstone? Because the community has just been going crazy over the randomness lately.
Okay, this is an important point, and I kind of want to educate and take an example from poker, chess, and all games that don't have randomness, right? If you don't have randomness, this game dies completely. If you play chess against somebody who's better than you, you lose 100% of the time. That's not fun. You might play 4 or 5 times, you keep losing, it's not fun. The way in which Hearthstone incorporates randomness is essential for the game's stability and growth. You know, at the best case scenario, I think like the best player in the world maybe, can beat me 70% of the time. That gives me like, sort of, it's kind of like Hold'em in that way, where it gives me incentive to want to continue to play, and I don't feel like I lose every time. And the randomness, I mean, obviously you don't want the game to be silly, where there's like no skill, but there's plenty of skill. You basically use the skill to get yourself in better positions so that you can take advantage of the randomness. Like in a poker tournament, for example, near the end, the blinds go up. So there's more luck, more randomness, if you will. But the best players are usually there in the end because they fight through the strategical parts and get there. So I would use that comparison of like when you're short stacked in a tournament in No Limit and you've got like not much play left, you just have to stick it all in. That's Yogg Saron. Right? Go for it. And it's really fun. It's great to be able to see a situation where, to have a deck where you're like, because so often, say you like Shaman before the upgrades, if you fell behind with Shaman on board control, you're just dead. There's no sense playing, right? But now, with cards like Yogg Saron and other things, you can flip it massively. And, yes, there's some luck in terms of drawing it and all that, but that's good for the game. Really important.
I would say, though, that Yogg Saron is kind of like going all in with 7/9 offsuit and actually winning more often than you're supposed to. Because Yogg is like that. Yogg is like the ultimate, like, well, I have no other play here, so let's do it. But I think the problem that a lot of people have, and we talked about this on the last show, was just that it's actually better than it's supposed to be, right? Because I think when Blizzard put the card out, they went, oh, it's a 7/5. It's going to kill itself most of the time. It's probably not that good. But as it turns out, like you tend to cast like Flame Strike, and then you sprint and draw 4 cards, and then you do all these things, heal up, and next thing you know, you're like winning. But I agree that I think randomness is really important because it does give all the players a chance, and it makes every game play out differently. The community has been just kind of railing on like the sheer amount of it, right? Because in poker, right, you kind of know like, well, this is where I stand in this hand. And in Hearthstone, you're kind of like, yeah, I don't know. Like, I know that this is a good play, but I have no idea what the result's going to be. But I think I'm with you on the game would die off without RNG completely, right? I am 100% on board with that.
But essentially what you're talking about is the card is too good, as is.
Sure.
And they often typically realize, okay, this card's too good. And I liked your suggestion in last show where you talked about just stopping the spells after
it dies.
Well, what about doing this? What about making the Yogg a 9/7, right? Mm-hmm. So you up its stats, but then, as you said, if it actually dies, then the spell stops. So you make it a little stronger because it's a 10 mana. You don't want like a 7/5 body out there. Yeah. But you so that I think that would actually help. And then it actually would be really fun because you're just praying that your Yogg doesn't die. And you've got like but I think that would be fun, and it would also nerf the card a little bit to make it more fair.
Like what I want, and I think we talked about last show because we got some response where people are like, oh, you just don't like fun. Well, we like what I think we want those. We want when we watch like a high skill level tournament, we want to watch these players make a lot of important decisions and then have those matter to the outcome of the game, right? So we want Yogg to essentially like not be the card that exists in those situations, but still is like something I can just play on the ladder when I'm just hanging out and having a good time and I'm streaming and I'm having some beers and stuff because it is super fun. So I think that's a good way is like up its stats a little bit. Maybe even when it casts spells that have drawbacks, actually like have those drawbacks, like overload when you cast Feral Spirits and stuff. because like none of that happens now, right?
Mhm.
So I don't know. The card just could use some tweaking for
Yeah.
sure.
When
Yeah.
pros do play, because they know they're playing a 3 out of 5, they typically look for decks that they're
Yeah.
going to run through and cycle their whole deck, so
Yeah.
that they limit the amount of variance in those decks. And they pretty much all do that. I think it's fun to let other people join those tournaments that just
Yeah.
are gamble. Like they just versions of Yogg, and they're like, because so in poker, right? You have professionals and you have recreational players.
Yeah.
And recreational players, if they play a style like that, like all in gamble, they can succeed at times. They're not going to in the long run. And I don't think that's bad for Hearthstone tournaments. If
Sure.
you have a guy who just brings these ridiculously insane high variance decks, he's probably not going to do very well very often. But when he does, people are like, oh my God. This is insane,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, well, you get the Chris Moneymaker effect, right? Which is one of the big reasons poker had such a boom, right? Is one guy who wasn't a known player
Yeah, you don't
wins
want
the biggest
barrier-
tournament ever.
You don't want the barrier for entry to be so high where, I have to study for 6 months, like go on the net, search all these decks in order to be competitive. It's kind of fun to just be able to throw together a high variance deck and, have a chance.
I think you actually made this point at one point. Sorry, Garrett. I saw a video where you talked about like poker needs to have the amateur players because otherwise the pros all go away, right? So, like we make money based on you guys coming in and playing like crazy, but also that's fun for people to watch, right? Is like the amateurs coming in and going all crazy and getting lucky sometimes. But if the amateurs all go away, you guys literally don't have a job anymore because you just sit there and you take advantage of that, right? So.
Right. Well, similarly with Hearthstone is if you knew people are not coming into the game, the
Yeah.
game simply fades. Like Magic the Gathering, like I have never played it, but everyone that I know that's really good at it said the barrier for entry is so big.
Yeah.
It's like I'm so far behind at this point. What's the point? And Hearthstone's done a great job of separating standard from wild, so that a new player can jump in. It's a limited, base of cards. Won't take them that long to get, and they can be competitive.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
I'm curious. I want to pull a little more on the thread that you brought up, Dills, about kind of the overall community reaction to cards like Yogg-Saron, to episodes like we had last week. Daniel, did you watch Batstone Firebat's tournament where they had card bans?
I heard you guys talking about it. I didn't watch it, but I love the idea. I think
Okay.
it's fantastic.
Yeah, so that's what I'm curious about because like for the past month, kind of towards the end of Karazhan, even during while it was rolling out, there's been a lot of talk, a lot of critiquing of Hearthstone going on, and that's even extended to our show. So clearly, there's a large part of the community that are feeling that it's not the best that it can be. So there's a lot of critiques happening. So, but what I'm thinking is, I'm curious how you feel, how important you feel just different formats are, because I think part of the issue with Yogg, you clearly, I mean, you're this is some of the most positive sentiments I've heard around Yogg-Saron ever coming out of your mouth, and it's great and it's refreshing to hear, and you make some fantastic points. And I'm curious if the reason it seems like so many people hate Yogg-Saron, I think it might just be fatigue, because if you're watching Hearthstone esports, specifically the events that give HCT points and are going to possibly send these players to BlizzCon, to the biggest tournament of the year, chances are you're seeing Yogg-Saron in almost every single matchup.
Yeah, I'm not sick of it. I mean, when last week's Tavern Brawl, I put like an Innervate, Wild Growth, Yogg-Saron.
Oh, you're one of those.
Nice.
I didn't win,
Good
but
decks.
it's really fun, But as far as like different formats and stuff, I think there's so much available for Hearthstone to do. So many different combinations of tournaments you can do. One tournament idea is you could have like 100 cards available. Give each guy 1 hour to create a deck, and then like play a tournament that way where they all have access to the same cards. Or even other silly tournament ideas that I was going to do myself, like have a Druid championship, right?
Nice.
Have like the Shaman champion. So like Ping Ping Ho could be Shaman champion of the world, right? I met that guy when I did it.
Sweet.
Love that guy. But yeah, there's so many different variables, and you guys talk about this a little bit, but I think it's super important too going forward that they incorporate tournaments into the software. And you could even, much like online poker does, have varying degrees of gold entry. So for example, you could have like a 5,000 gold entry tournament, right? Where 16 people go into bracket and it's 5,000 gold to get in, but you get crazy prizes. You could have a 1 gold, a 5 gold, a 10 gold, and just have tournaments within the software so that people don't have to go elsewhere. I
Yes.
talked to the people there about that, and they're like, they kind of want to keep it fun. I'm like, it's still fun,
Sure.
I think it would be more fun than a lot of people find Arena is at this point.
I agree 100%. I mean, I when online poker was still something you could do here in the States without living in Vegas or Jersey, I used to play tons and tons of poker tournaments online. It wasn't. I mean, that wasn't the way to necessarily grind money. It was better to play on just a cash table, and just win more hands than I lose. But the tournaments were just more interesting to me because, it changes over time and you get these kind of interesting situations later on. And you start off, with the 5, 10 antes and stuff, and you go up. And that was all really fun for me. And I really want to do something like that in Hearthstone. I'm glad you brought something like that up. That's cool.
I don't know if this corrupts what Hearthstone's supposed to be about, but like I said, you can create these different tiers of gold entry tournaments. Like down the road, there's no reason why Hearthstone couldn't be a for money play game. So you could actually play a tournament for $5, $100 with 16 people and have real prize money where you actually play for real money. I think down the road, there's no reason that they couldn't enter that space, and I imagine it would be profitable for them to do that.
Absolutely, it would be.
Yeah.
So in poker, you do get lots of formats. I guess you could kind of say, at this point, Texas Hold'em is like standard, but then you got people who specialize in stud and Omaha and things like that. I think that does keep things really interesting. Do you guys as poker pros kind of get fatigued on Hold'em from time to time and just kind of need to do those other formats?
Much like with Hearthstone, I'm actually a big fan of playing all the games.
Yeah.
And one of the problems I see with poker, especially No Limit Hold'em online, as we talked about, is the game's gotten to the point where it's pretty much close to solved. Like what happens when the meta in Hearthstone after about 3 months, everybody's playing the same decks, everybody knows what the best decks are, and then it's like, okay, this is no longer as fun. So then the expansion comes out and you see all these like weird, crazy decks, and you're like, what is happening? My head is blowing up because people are figuring it out. If Hold'em could do that and sort of change the meta in a sense, like have a double river card, like 2 rivers come out, or, you put the cards out 2 at a time, then 3. If they did that every 3 months or something, I think it would have a positive effect because it's more difficult to solve when you give people only 3 months to do so. And once they have, let's move on.
Do it again, yeah. Yeah, there you go. Just add the 5th suit to the deck of cards that we've been waiting for years, right?
Why not?
Or just play a game called Jocelyn Wins.
Well, see, if you play like the home games I used to play at, the meta changed every single hand because it was dealer's choice, and so there was like one guy who always tried to make everything wild, and that was I don't know if I'd want to play that competitively, but I totally get that sentiment, man.
Well, let's rein things in. Let's spend some time talking about the not crazy wild decks that you're putting together, Daniel. Let's talk about your climb to legend because you recently hit legend. What all coalesced? What made you want to make this push, and what were your star decks?
Well, I always wanted to be a legend. LP was a legend, and I'm like, I'm embarrassed. So it took me a while to get to legend because you have to devote a lot of time, and it's important to devote a lot of time in the last 2 weeks. I feel like playing up the ladder in the first week is kind of a waste of time unless you are already a legend genius, because you end up facing all these geniuses and it's like you can't really have a solid win rate, so you end up maybe 15, 16 anyway. So week 1, I typically just play arena and goof around, do my daily challenges. But what I do also in the beginning of the month, what I try to do, it's really fun, was I would play like mini arenas on my own. So I'd say I'd take a priest deck, right? And I'd play until I lost 3 games with it. So if I go 2, 3, 3 and 2, whatever. And then I would do that with all different characters. And after a little while, I'd look at my win percentages because I track them, of course, being the nerd that I am. And then I would just focus on the decks that have the best winning percentage. The 3 decks last month that I found for me had the best winning percentage was the mid-range Shaman, the Warlock Zoo, and the what the hell was the other one I was using? The Hunter, the mid-range Hunter.
Okay.
Yeah, the double Call of Wild. So what I would do is when I got deeper, like rank 5 or rank 4, I would, if I lost like 2 or 3 games in a row with one, I'd switch and I'd just keep kind of circle. And I think I learned it from you guys on this show. But the time of day that you play makes a huge difference.
Huge difference.
Big time.
Yeah. 1 a.m., 2 a.m., I go from rank 2 to rank 5. I wake up at 7 a.m., 8 a.m., because I was on jet lag time. I was in Europe. I was like going 12-1.
Nice.
And that's how I ultimately got to legend. Was I went 8-1 with that with my mid-range shaman deck, like at 6 a.m. And had my moment.
Nice.
And you took down the hated rogue at the very end too. That was I saw your video. That was pretty sweet. The excitement was awesome, by the way.
I hate on rogue because I think much like Jocelyn, I don't really understand it. Like, I come from, I like, tempo decks. Those are simple. They're easy to play. Control decks I've learned to play, but Rogue, it's just, how the fuck is prep a good card? It's a card that just says, well, you get to play another spell that's 1 mana for 0. Who cares? It's like, just seems like, I don't know. It's very like one turn based, and I've never really gotten my head around it.
It's a weird class for sure, because it takes a lot of skills that no other class takes. So like things like activating combos, things like understanding how much damage I can take with my dagger. And yeah, understanding when to use prep properly, like all this stuff never happens in any other class. But with Innervate, I innervate and then I play something big, and I just do that, right? Yeah, that's tempo.
That I understand.
Yeah. But with like prep, it's like I prep and then I shadow strike you, right? And like there you go. That's kind of tempo too. Anyway, apparently Tuesdays is now the day when they do loud things outside my window. So sorry about that.
Hooray! Every podcaster's nightmare. Shared walls. Oh, fantastic. So when you said when you would lose 2 or 3 games, you would swap decks. Now, were you swapping decks based on what you were losing to, or were you just kind of rotating through your stable of decks?
Yeah, I didn't think I was smart enough to really. I've never really understood like what the meta is and what. So I basically just kind of guessed. Where I just was like, instead of guessing, I just went through a system where if I lost, I think it was 2 games with 3 games with a specific character. Like if I lost 3 with the Warlock, I switch to the Hunter. If I lose 3 there, I switch to the Shaman, and I just go to try to get on a streak. I don't know that's probably not the best approach, because I'm sure, there's probably like more thought that should go into what you're facing. But I'm not even really good at understanding what decks work well against other decks. That's also another skill. Like, okay, so I have a mid-range Hunter. What's that really good against? I'm not really that sure. It just seems like good. Period. I don't know.
I was gonna say yes, everything.
You make it to turn 8. That's
it's really good against Warrior, and I would say Druid is its toughest matchup. So, but you're pretty much good against the field with a mid-range, especially now, because everything they play doesn't die when you kill it, right? So you just constantly have minions on the board.
It's a little gross.
Yeah, and you hit them for 2 every time you feel like it. So yeah, it's a good deck.
Yeah.
But I think your method is actually really sound, because the method that I kind of have been a proponent of and telling people to use is the just push the button 15 times a day thing, right? Where every time you want to sit down to play a session, make sure you're playing enough games that it matters. And I like the idea of an odd number, so that at the end you either have a winning or losing record. You can kind of go back and keep track of what you're doing. But it's also just kind of forcing yourself to say, oh, when I lost a game, that's no big deal. I just play another game. Because to really ultimately get to Legend, it is going to be a grind of a certain amount of games, right? So it doesn't really matter what you do as long as you're confident in your deck and you're going to play enough to give yourself a real shot. How many games did you play, by the way?
I'm going to have to give you credit for my system on getting to Legend last month, because I listened to the show and you talked about 15 games a day. So I made sure that I was on pace to play 15 games a day. So like if I didn't play 15 one day, I would play like 30 the next day. So basically I wanted to be ahead of pace. So after 10 days, I wanted to be over 150 games played. I ended up playing, I don't remember, but I think 500 or 600 games total to get to Legend. But yeah, that's the system I was using, was your system, which is, the 15. And I think that if you are going to grind towards Legend, you have to kind of map it out in terms of your schedule. Like I'm on the road a lot playing tournaments. Actually, I got knocked. I was in Barcelona playing a big EPT tournament, and I was with like it's a couple guys from the team Liquid. And, we were doing a photo shoot together and stuff. And then they're Hearthstone players. And then, like, I busted the tournament, and I just looked around and I go, fuck it, I'm going to grind for Legend. So I'm at this big poker tournament for millions of dollars, and I spent 3 days in my room playing Hearthstone.
Is that the tournament where you met Savitz? Yeah. I saw you were commenting. You were actually doing, like, commentary on the broadcast of it, and they cut to him, and you're like, I know that guy. It was an awesome moment for a Hearthstone fan.
That's great. Oh man, that's. I would argue it is probably difficult to find someone who has that kind of dedication. It's like, well, what did you do to get to Legend? Oh, I don't know. I sacrificed a lot of hours during another big tournament for another major game.
For millions of dollars.
For millions of dollars to hit Legend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I
okay.
Legend matters.
Yeah, Legend matters, man. Okay, speaking of millions of dollars, now this is. Sorry to bring this up, but the way you handle stuff is really impressive to me. And I just want to talk about this because we have a lot of, I see players in Hearthstone get super salty because they lost 1 star one time to some bad RNG. you in the recent one drop tournament, you finished second place, and in that tournament, you were actually a more than 5-1 favorite, I think, in that last hand, right? Ace 4 versus Queen Jack, was it, or King Queen? King Queen, yeah. And he actually hit the straight or something like that on the turn, and you, I mean, the initial look was like, but then you kind of like real quickly went into, well, okay, that's what happens sometimes. So I'm very curious, like, how do you kind of prepare yourself to deal with those types of moments? I think it would be good for people who play Hearthstone and get unlucky and just get soul crushed by it. Like, yeah, how do you prepare for something like that? I mean, especially at such a big moment to be able to handle it that well. I was very impressed by.
It's funny you mention that, because occasionally I'll watch some Twitch streams of some Hearthstone guys, and they'll play like a Flame Walker, which deals like 2 random damage, and it doesn't go exactly where they want. Right? Yeah. There's 4 targets, and it hit 1 and another, and like, never. Really? Like, so the key focus is this: as long as you make the decisions that are the optimal decisions, the luck just is just gonna happen, right? So if you get a pair of aces and someone else has a pair of 4s, about 20% of the time you're gonna lose, right? You just have to fade that. So if you have a Ragnaros out there and there's 3 targets, and you need it to hit this 1 target, it's gonna do that about 33% of the time. So as long as you're making the decisions that are correct, focusing on the luck is a waste of time. But I watch Tiss all the time. He was like on an 8-0 run, like on his way to some crazy legend top 10 or whatever, and then he lost 1 fucking game. He was 8-0. He lost 1 game. He was like, oh, man. Whoa, how good does this guy draw? It's crazy, man. God, how can I beat this deck? Oh, man, he's so lucky. I'm like, I'm sure in that 8-0 run you had no luck go your way at all. So focus on the fact that, okay, A, sometimes you're going to get unlucky because of randomness, right? But B, you're going to get lucky too, right? Because obviously the game works that way. As long as you make better decisions than your opponent, have better decks and are more prepared, the luck will take care of itself. It's like a victim mentality to just go, I'd be number 1 in the world in Hearthstone if it wasn't for bad RNG. Seriously.
Yeah.
Not number 1 because you're not good enough. Period.
It's true. The thing is, like you said, is just put yourself in the best position you can, and over time you win more often than you lose. And like the seasons where I really grind and I really try hard, I was playing a zoo deck, and the running gag on my stream was that my implosions always hit for 2. And I was the king of the 2 implosion, right? But the fact was I still won like 80% of my games because I didn't use it in a time where if it hit for 2, I would be crushed, right? So it's like you just manage that properly. And you go, hey, if it hits for 2, I still have an option here. I still have an out where I can find a way to actually win this game properly. And I think, we were keeping track. I had like 75% 2 implosions. And but I was still winning 80% of the games. So it's like, it's just a matter of managing it properly, right? So I just personally wanted to bring that up because I think that was, in your poker career, I've seen you win a lot and all that kind of stuff. But the losing and then being able to handle it like that in that type of situation, which, you could say, oh, I was 84% to win. But technically, when the hand started, you were only like, 54% or something like that, 52%. So.
Pro tip, stop counting. You're like, oh,
yes.
I'm 90% to get versus, when you start counting that, then you focus on all this negative energy. Just focus on making the right moves and like stop whining. Nobody cares.
The bad beat story in poker, right? No one wants to hear your bad beat story.
Hear that your Ragnaros hit the wrong target, or that the brawl he had, you had 6 out and he had 1, and you somehow ended up with, I don't want to hear it. That's not why you lost. Maybe why you lost that game, but in the long run, that's not what differentiates good and bad players.
Dude, I'm on. Yeah, all of our crazy game stories are always when the guy wins, right? Have you noticed that?
No,
that's what we want to hear about.
We've had some fantastic ones where they were the ones to lose and they respected their opponent for whatever bizarre way that they actually pull the win out. And those are actually my personal favorite crazy game stories.
Me too.
Well, awesome. Well, it's been great kind of getting to know you, Daniel. Now, ready to play guest host while we bust out the Hearthstone news?
Fire it out.
Fantastic. Let's do it.
Good news, everyone!
So since we last spoke last Tuesday, probably the biggest news is that the arena bans that we talked about, 2 weeks ago now, are live in the game. So all of the cards that we talked about on our arena special that were announced to be removed from the arena draft pool are gone. And I'm going to pass it right over to Dills. Dills, how does it feel in arena right now?
Well, it definitely still feels like Mage is number one, and I don't think anybody expected that to necessarily change. And the thing, I think some people might have thought that after all these changes, we would suddenly stop seeing so many Mages in Arena. But the fact is, them still being number one, whether it's by a huge margin or a slim margin, still means that when people get offered Mage, they pick it, right? So you're still seeing more Mages. But I have noticed as you get deeper into runs, you're starting to see other classes be represented a little bit more because the Mages aren't always the ones getting to 7-1, 8-1, all that kind of stuff. So as you get deeper into runs, it used to be suddenly 60% of your opponents were Mages. That has definitely significantly changed. So I've noticed, like I had an 8-1 or something like that the other day, and I was facing like Druids and Shamans and stuff. So that was really cool, and that was very refreshing. So I think that effect has already hit. But I don't think we'll really know like where everybody kind of shakes out and where they all land until these changes have been out for, a few more weeks at least, because it's still so fresh. Maybe not even everybody knows that these changes even happened. I mean, we talk about them, but I think a lot of players literally just don't. They click Hearthstone and they go, and they don't know what the hell's happening.
Yeah, if you don't read the official website, or even if you do read the patch notes, you have no clue what cards were removed from Arena.
I was waiting for the patch note conversation. Steve, I had so much faith in you.
I know,
but
Steve,
man, they were shit.
Patch note Steve failed again.
Although they did actually go back later and make it a link, so at least Steve listens to criticism.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah, absolutely. So, obviously, Daniel, you mentioned playing Arena quite a bit. Were you excited about this change?
I think it's a good change, but I think there's more that needs to be done to make Arena worthwhile. For somebody like me, I play ladder because there's a goal, right? There's a goal of hitting legend or whatever. And I guess, I've never gotten to 12 wins because I don't play it that much, but there's not a lot of incentive there, like long-term incentive, like tournaments. I think they should do Arena tournaments. That would be another possible.
Now you're my favorite person.
Like, yeah. You take a couple people, and then, or I even liked your idea, Garrett, about adding 5 cards you can just discard, because sometimes you get stuck with an Arena deck and it's like, oh, this would be a really cool card if I catch all these other ones, and then you draft it, and then you're like, you never catch any of them. You're like, okay, how quickly can I go 0-3 and move on to the next one? That's not fun.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, we spent the last 30 minutes talking about how randomness is a good thing for Hearthstone, but there's definitely there's a limit. You need to rein it in at some point.
And I think in limited, that's the best way to do it. Is just give us more options so that later we can make some decisions when we're deck building, and then you could legitimately have these tournaments, because they have done the arena tournaments where you can't ever draft more than 2 of the card, obviously, because it doesn't work. But and those are really fun to watch. But again, it's like one guy might just get a really good draft and then they just crush everybody else. But if you have 35 cards in the draft, all those decks are going to be somewhat closer together. And I will say this though too, that the change that was made has definitely noticeably done that. All of the decks are closer together. So before, I felt like you were just, when you had a bad deck, it was so bad because you had all these really terrible options that you were getting offered. And with these changes, the bad decks are just less bad. They're closer now to something competitive, and that's a huge deal. So I think Arena has been way fun this last week. I think for the rest of this season, I'll probably concentrate on a lot more Arena when I'm streaming. So each week I will come to you with even more knowledge than the previous week before about where the actual meta stands. And I recommend everyone go check out the Lightforge podcast with Adwakta and Merps. They actually did a 2-hour spectacular right after all these changes were announced, and they went through everything in super detail. So check them out. Shout out to those guys.
Yeah, I think it's a really good step forward for Arena, and I'm excited to see what happens next.
But now, come on, guys, make my prediction true. Another announcement in like 2 more weeks, right? Come on, Blizzard. I know you can do it.
I don't think we're gonna see any.
We're rubbing up against October, which means we're like almost a month away from BlizzCon, and I could see them just kind of. I could just see them waiting. I could see our little apps on our phones for BlizzCon updating, and then we check the schedule and be like, Arena panel for Hearthstone. I wonder what they're going to talk about there.
Oh, Daniel, any plans to have a rematch? You did beat Elke last year, right? 3-1, I think.
I went into that match and I was pretty green at Hearthstone at the time, and everyone was like the betting line because a lot of I'm a poker player, so everybody's gambling. They made him almost 2-1 favorite to beat me, right? And I'm like, okay, whatever. And I think he made a couple mistakes. He played this weird Echo giant mage.
Oh, the Echo Mage, yeah.
And then I actually did something stupid. I didn't know. I was bad at understanding what my opponents had. So he was playing that Echo Mage thing with Ice Block and all that. And he put some Doomsayers out there and froze all my shit. I had 7 stuff. I went to face instead of killing the Doomsayer. But I ended up winning that game anyway because I plucked Fireball. It's the only way he could lose. And I ended up winning 3-1. And he was crushed. Legitimately. He was embarrassed and crushed that he lost. He could lose $1 million in a poker tournament and laugh and giggle, but he was heartbroken. It was crazy. I loved it so much.
That's great. Well, I mean, he's actually competed in some top level tournaments and done fairly well. So I'm sure he was expecting to come in there and walk all over you. And I think, didn't you lose the first game too? I think the first game you lost, so you were down 0-1.
I just tried to go aggro hunter way back when that was a thing, and just go face, face, face. And I remember Life Coach because they were doing commentary because they were we're trying not to make fun of me too bad, which was kind of them, but they were kind of so what did you think of the play? And he's like, well, at least he went face. It's a face hunter. At least he did that, right? But they were good about it. They didn't mock me too hard. So, and I wouldn't have minded. They could be hard on me. I've done celebrity poker tournaments where we have actual celebrities playing, and we're supposed to take it easy on them, and I'm always like, why?
Give it to them.
Let's stick the needle in a little bit.
It's kind of a part of the entertainment factor.
I hope that we all get a chance to see you at BlizzCon this year. That would be cool.
Yeah.
We'll
Absolutely.
see. I'm not sure if I'm going to make it this year, but it was a fun event. It was the first time I'd ever seen anything like that. It's the first time really me entering into that world. I come in through Hearthstone, but then I saw 30,000 people at Staples with 5,000 people waiting outside, and it's really and there's people crying when they're showing the trailer. I'm like, Elke was sitting next to me bawling, crying instead of trailer. I'm like, wow, bro, you are dedicated. I didn't know you were this big a nerd, but I love it.
Oh, we
thought Varian was gonna die. It was really emotional. Okay.
Did you see Elke's Malagos outfit that he wore?
No.
So Google is coming up right now.
I'm Googling as fast as I can.
It was unbelievable. Yeah, pretty detailed. He still owes me because he lost that bet. He's supposed to wear a Sludge Belcher costume at a poker tournament.
Oh my god.
Hey.
This is not coming up, sadly. How is this not documented? How is this not documented? I don't believe this.
I'm sure it's somewhere. The internet knows all.
Yeah.
Well, also, since we last had an episode, the Hearthstone America Summer Championship wrapped up. Mostly unknown players this time around, which has been happening on and off all year. Hot Meowth actually ended up taking first place. And the finals came down to a Yogg Druid mirror match, which normally I would be groaning because I'm so sick of seeing Yogg Druid, but this was a really good game. I recommend everyone go and watch it if they haven't seen this.
Yeah, and Hot Meowth has had some really good results recently. He's a good player. It was a pretty fun tournament. I think a little bit it kind of got outshined by Batstone.
It did, yeah.
Oh, I absolutely agree.
I didn't watch this at all.
Yeah.
I just watched Batstone.
The Batstone hit something like 50K viewers on Twitch, and this was only at 20K or something like that, which just proves to you that it proves to me that first of all, getting some hype around your tournament is a big deal. A lot of times these just kind of come and go, and you don't really realize when it's happening, and then all of a sudden, hey, there it is. But the other thing too is people just are hungering for something different and new and fresh. So. Shout out to Batstone. This was still a fantastic tournament to watch. I really enjoyed it. If you didn't watch it, the VODs are all up and they're really cool. So definitely recommend checking it out.
Yeah, I feel like I just didn't know what was going on this weekend at all. There was no anything in the launcher. There was no crazy hype. It was just kind of oh, it's over. It's done. We have a champion. Okay. I literally heard about it Monday. Oh yeah, this thing happened.
Yeah, I
love watching the pros play. I find it there was one game. It reminds me how much more I need to learn. I remember watching one game at the last one where it was a warrior versus a paladin, and they went 5 turns, without using their hero power or anything. So like, I'm like, you're a warrior. You can just tap for 2 and get 2 armor. And, you're a paladin. You can throw out a 1/1, but neither were doing it because they were so deep into like, okay, I need to get all my cards out. So I have to like battle rage and get more cards. I'm like, holy shit, I never would have thought of anything.
I know this exact game you're talking about. I think that was actually a dream hack or something, wasn't it? That was Chalky and Terrence, I think.
Yeah,
And,
right.
I call him the black guy, but I thought that might be,
Yeah, we've had Terrence on the show before, and he's really cool and really good player. We actually had both those guys on, but that game, everyone was blown away by the patience that they were both showing. It was literally, they were in a standoff. Like, who's going to hit the button first? And neither one blinked. And actually, I can't remember now who won the game, but that's when you start to get to the next level stuff, where it's just like, what? Why wouldn't you gain life?
When these pros play, they make plays or they like pass on plays that I'm just like, okay, I have this card, play this card, But they hold back certain things because they have a deeper understanding of and all that. And like to not play a 1/1 because that the warrior's going to use it to play off to do all that stuff. It's like that's beautiful to watch. And when you have good commentators who are explaining how insane this is and how sick it is, it's like watching an intense poker hand where 2 guys are playing next level, but it's very sophisticated to even understand. Because otherwise, if 2 people that have never played Hearthstone watch that, they'd be like, huh, how come they just keep pressing pass? That's boring.
It's right? Probably it's not the best game to show someone to try and get them into Hearthstone.
Check this game out. They do nothing. But it's amazing.
Yeah, but if you've been playing it for a while, I think it's one of the best games to go and watch.
To me, it's like flopping a set and then leading out, right? Because you actually know that's the right move, where everybody in the world, every amateur in the world, like checks and tries to hide the strength of their hand or whatever. And it's like, no. Actually, I want to make more money if I do that. And like, that's where you start going, wait, what? But then he folds and you make no more money. You're like, no, he's going to call here because he's got to draw. Like, you start to get into the like, now he doesn't think I have a set ever and that kind of stuff. And that's the thinking that really intrigues me, right?
The level of understanding required to know exactly what deck you're playing and every card in that deck. Like that intrigues me because I have no idea. I'm like, okay, I'm playing a freeze mage. I know kind of what's in that. I don't know every card in that deck. Where these guys know to the card, like it seems as though they know to the card with very few exceptions, every card in their deck, and they play accordingly. And that's next stuff.
Now they get down to the end and they've actually counted out what cards are gone and what cards are still left and how many more removals they need to hold on to and all that kind of stuff. It's really interesting, and it also comes into play with deck building, where when you know that this guy's going to be playing, say, like a N'Zoth Paladin, you know exactly how many threats there are, and you need to build a deck that will be able to deal with all of those threats so that you don't actually get to one point where you just have no more ways to deal with it, and then the Tyrion comes out, right, and you lose. Like, you actually have to have one extra bit of removal to then be able to beat that deck. It's super interesting and intricate.
Yeah.
Right, and then you know, first of all, that that's the deck that they're playing. And if they're not, then you're like, oops, that was a waste.
Called that wrong.
Because you have to build decks that are versatile. That could, like you said, have enough removal to handle that deck. But also, if you happen to be playing a different, paladin or something like that, it's actually decent against that too. It's just, there's so many variables in this game. It never gets boring. People ask me, like, am I still playing? I play every single day because it's continuously, every game is different.
Yeah.
I'm curious about poker on this because you're known as kind of like a small ball player. Like you like to limp pots, or not necessarily limp pots, but you like to make smaller bets and smaller raises. You like to call and actually, see a flop and let the hand play out. Then do you ever have to then come to a tournament knowing everybody knows this is how I play, and I'm actually going to start jamming, or I'm going to start doing all sorts of weird different things just to throw people off? Does that ever come into play when you're preparing for tournaments?
Well, with poker, and I wouldn't say this is necessarily true for Hearthstone, but self-awareness is the most important aspect. Like, me understanding what my opponents think of me is a weapon I can use against them. So everybody knows, like you do, that I'm a small ball player, right? So if I play against you, I know that you know that. So now I can start throwing you curveballs. And I think that's similar to, like, somewhat deck building. I think the really, smart guys have a deck with a prototype that looks like it's something, and then they have a surprise card or two in there that you're like, what? What do you mean Kel'Thuzad? Who has that? That doesn't make any sense.
That's exactly what I do just when I...
curveballs are important in poker. I don't know as much I don't think as much in Hearthstone, but somewhat.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, like Chalky bringing a bunch of control decks to DreamHack definitely threw everybody off the scent.
Yeah.
But,
I do that with my friends just to screw with them because they assume I'm going to play mid-range or control, so that they see a shaman, they're like, yeah, mid-range, and I'm just like, lava burst, you're dead.
Yeah.
So... anyway, we have Dills, you wanted to talk about Tempo Mage today, but before we do that, before we get into our strategy talk, we want to thank our patrons who are supporting us over at patreon.com/TAC. There's so many of you over there supporting us. We have Taco, our open tournament coming up this weekend, as a matter of fact. Jocelyn, have the invites gone out for the highest level patrons already?
They have, yeah. So if you have been a patron of The Angry Chicken and you are at the $2 or above level, then check your inboxes because I sent the emails out probably about 3 o'clock today. So the password and the link to the tournament are in that email. So go and check it out. If you are a patron but you're below that level, you'll get your invites tomorrow and it will open up to everyone on Thursday. Tournament is on Saturday, starts at noon Eastern. I know that's really early Pacific. I'm sorry. And so the plan is to have a stream up all day, and Dills and I are going to be doing some casting, some commentary. It's going to be a good time. So,
and Sharon wants to know, Daniel, are you signing up
this weekend? Unfortunately, I'm actually playing the PokerStars W Coupe. I'm going to Canada to play. It's like, I'm sorry, it's a $1.5 million first prize. How much is
it's $40 and a pint glass.
Yeah, a pint glass that's one of a kind. You can.
Is there a trophy? Because maybe for a trophy, I'll play.
The pint glass is the trophy. It's a custom-matched pint glass. Only one of them will be made for the winner of this tournament.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely want to get into some tournaments because I love that. I love it. I think tournaments are even more fun because you can be worse than the guy and still, like I was with Elke, and still beat him. I just think they're awesome.
Great. Well, before we move on, let's thank some of our patrons this episode. Thank you to Ignatius P., Michael S., Stains by Kingsby, Kyle T., Jeffrey H., DM, no last name given, Daniel C., and Neat Dude.
Oh, Neat Dude.
Which I believe
wearing a Neat Dude hat right now.
I believe Dill's wearing a Neat Dude hat as we speak, so that's awesome.
My favorite hat.
Nice. Well, let's get into this week's strategy discussion and talk some giant tempo mage and, hey, probably a little more Yogg-Saron.
Hit it very hard.
Wanna blow something up? Time to pay!
So, Dills asked you today, hey, what do you want to talk about? And you're like, Daniel likes Tempo Mage. Let's talk about Tempo Mage because I've been playing a Giants Mage. So if you're watching the video, everyone, you can see Dills' giant Yogg-Saron Tempo Mage on the left there. And just for comparison, we put up Noki's non-giant Tempo Mage on the right. If you're listening in an audio version, head to amove.tv/TAC, find the episode 172 post, and pull up the show notes linked at the bottom of said post. But Dill, sell me on this man, because as you know, and as Daniel has told me not to dwell on, I have the worst luck in the world when it comes to playing Tempo Mage.
Well, okay, so when I first found out that Daniel was playing Hearthstone, was actually a clip from the World Series of Poker, where on the actual broadcast, you talked to some guy across the table at Hearthstone, and I think you said, I have a golden mage, and you were saying Tempo Mage? Yeah, that's the deck I used. So I know that you actually... I don't know if that's what you started with, but at some point you kind of fell in love with the Tempo Mage deck. So this is what I'm currently using. I'm curious to know what your thoughts are on Tempo Mage, though, before I go into this deck.
Well, I mean, when I started playing Hearthstone, I literally got Golden Mage without really playing anything else. I just played Mage. I'm like, I'm going to learn this character. I'm going to learn how to play just this one deck, and I played it until Golden. And I love Tempo Mage. It's very easy to learn and easy to play, especially the Tempo version. Although the Tempo version's gotten more complicated, because in the past there was a little bit more minions. Like you pay, I think it had a piloted shredder in there and stuff. Mm-hmm. But now it's like I kind of like it better now because it's a little more complicated in that you don't want to waste that turn with the Flamewalker, And I always like the Flamewalker Mirror Image, Arcane Missile, like on turn 6 or 7.
Sure.
Which you're kind of set up for now. You just like. It's almost like it's not a mate. You don't want to get like way ahead on turn 1 and 2. It's like removal turn 1, 2, 3, and then by turn 6 or 7 you go bah.
Yeah.
Just shit all over his face with all your blasting.
Yeah, you just win. Like you literally just win in one turn. That's the crazy part about this deck. But so the version I'm using has that like kind of way to do that explosive start that sometimes just wins the game with mana worms. So the cool thing about this deck, and I actually have somewhere around like an 85% win rate with this deck. And this is crazy. Like you're not supposed to have a deck that has that good of a win rate. That being said, I haven't played it a whole bunch at like the legend ladder against, all legend players. It's mostly been what I've been using to climb early on in seasons. So it might have a higher win rate based on that than it's supposed to. But basically you have the ability to open with like Mana Worm and then go directly into Frostbolt, remove their guy, and Mana Worm just starts growing and hitting their face a whole bunch of times. You also have the ability to do like what Daniel just said. On turn 6 or 7, you Flame Waker, and then you just spells everywhere, and all their stuff dies, and you just have this amazing tempo turn. And then it also has Arcane Giants, so sometimes you get to the late game, you still haven't won. Well, I just plop down 2/0 mana 8/8s, and then I just smash your face in with those. And then it also has a whole bunch of burn spells now with Firelands Portal, Forgotten Torch, Double Fireball, Frostbolt, and you play Kabbalist Tome, which oftentimes draws you into more burn. So it's got like 5 different win conditions, right? And that's what I think makes this deck so powerful, is not only can I win this way, I can win this way, I can win this, so I can go up against any type of deck and adjust my strategy based on either how the game starts to play out in the early game or what deck they're playing. And to me, like, that's what makes the deck so special in its current incarnation, is that I could just beat you so many different ways. And then, of course, if everything goes to hell, I just play Yogg-Saron, right? So it's a really difficult deck to beat because you can run me out of stuff, and then I just play more stuff. It used to be that tempo mages, probably in the era that Daniel's talking about, if they were out of cards by like turn 5 or 6, and there was like no real reload mechanic, right? Other than 2 arcane intellects. A lot of times they weren't even like playing Azure Drakes. They're playing water elementals and piloted shredders and stuff. And now it's like with Kabbalist Tome, you just feel like you have a full hand all the time. So
yeah, and it's not even just
that's the big
Kabbalist
difference.
Tome. With Babbling Book, you're filling up you're like refilling your hand before you even need to on turn 1 in some cases. You're adding more cards to your hand.
Well, the Babbling Book does a couple things. It's a 1/1, which then allows you on turn 2, you draw a card, and then you can like ping their 3/2 and then use the 1/1. And then like suddenly it's like you've made this like awesome tempo play and draw on value. That card's crazy. Sorry, Daniel, what were you gonna say?
Well, I was going to say, it feels like cheating to be able to have, with all the win conditions you have in that deck and the tempo, to also have Yogg-Saron for any time you're trailing. So,
Yeah.
like, you've got all these win conditions. You've got Blast. You've got the Arcane Giants for free, which is like, really? Okay, I'll take. And you're going to get them for 0 a decent amount of time, or 1 or 2 when your hand is pretty empty. But then, like, any time you're behind, being able to play Yogg, where you're going to have a ton of spells, feels like that shouldn't be allowed because it makes it so good. It's like such a versatile deck. And then you have Yogg on top. It feels like it has everything. It's hard. I mean, I'm not that surprised you're winning at an 85% clip, in the earlier ranks. I imagine the Legends have some sort of voodoo spell against it, but I don't know what it is.
It doesn't have a lot of minions. So if there's like a drawback to the deck, it's that it doesn't actually have that many minions. So when you play against a deck with tons of removal themselves, sometimes you then rely only on the burn to actually get you there to do that 30 damage. But when you can connect with a couple of minions just a couple times, it really closes the gap between the 30 and 0, right? So, if I can get one swing in with one Arcane Giant, I probably have enough burn to actually do the rest. So, yeah, it's like, to me, the thing is, so many classes now that I feel like I had trouble with in the past are taking enough damage in the early game that I can then just switch to being like a burn deck at the end. I remember I beat a couple of the Paladin with the double Forbidden Healing. Like, they healed for like 60 in the game, and I still beat them. I still killed them, and that's, to me, the mark of a deck that might be like tipping the scales of OP a little bit, at least for ladder. I will say, though, that if you play against a Shaman, you might still, because they just play such powerful minions in the early game, if you can't line up your removal properly, that's a deck that can definitely run you over. But against almost everything else, I can generally get there. So yeah, definitely recommend it.
I tested out your deck today, and I actually probably the most I've been enjoying a tempo mage deck probably ever. It's always been one of my least favorite archetypes. Probably underneath rogue. Kind of agree with Daniel and Jocelyn in that regard. But that was probably the biggest issue I noticed was if something is over 6 health and you haven't found any of your spell power, it can be a little scary to deal with that threat.
This is true, yeah. But one of the biggest things in this deck is you have double Cult Sorcerer and double Azure Drake, and then those Arcane Blasts are just disgusting when you play either of those minions. So,
yes, absolutely. I mean, the odds are in your favor that you will find what you need, but you can draw poorly and find yourself in a bit of a rough situation.
No, absolutely. I mean, any deck can draw poorly, but this deck doesn't feel like it ever really does. Now, one thing I'll say, I'll just make a couple notes here. When I first started playing the deck, I was playing double Firelands Portal because it was the new card, and I really wanted to try it out. Turns out that card is just too heavy to have 2 of. and having the one flame strike was just so important that I ended up switching to the single flame strike. And once I did that, that's when the deck kind of turned into high gear, because I was able to just fall behind and come back in multiple ways, right? Yogg or Flame Strike could bring me back into games, or Flame Waker. And then the other thing to note here is that I went down to one Forgotten Torch, which I used to run 2, and one Arcane Missiles, which I also used to run 2. So you have less explosive starts, but I was able to fit the Babbling Book in. And I think anybody playing Tempo Mage can attest that the Babbling Book is actually just too good not to have at this point. So
yeah,
if anybody out there is not playing that in their Tempo Mage deck, just give it a shot, dude. That card is disgusting.
And I also think there's absolutely room to prune spells if you're running double Kabbalist Tome and double Babbling Book, because you're going to be finding, well, that's 6, 7, 8 extra spells that you didn't put in your deck.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then the other thing too, I made the recent change. I was running a single Ice Block for a while, because sometimes I found that I just needed to live one more turn to be able to cast all of my burn. So Ice Block was like pretty good. But the problem was, more often than not, I was just getting Ice Blocks off Kabbalist Tome. So I was like, I don't even need to run the damn card. So I ended up putting a single Faceless Summoner in just to give me one more minion to play. And there was no 6 drops in the deck. So having one more minion, and actually, I mean, that minion's so damn strong. It's just such a sick turn 6 play, especially when you've been removing everything up until then. So, and then the other version that I'm just listing is just to show you guys the versatility of Tempo Mage. I don't have a lot of experience with this deck, but rather than running the Giants, Noki is running Archmage Antonidas kind of as his finisher here, which makes a lot of sense when you think about how many small spells you actually run in the deck, right? So you have the ability to just generate 5 or 6 fireballs all of a sudden, and that's how you win the game there too. So it doesn't really matter how you necessarily get to your win condition. The key here is that you have such strong swing turns with Tempo Mage that I think it's in a really good spot right now. So if anyone's out there looking for a deck to play, I know there's tons of Shaman out there right now. This deck can deal with that and also kind of deal with everything else too. So give it a shot, guys.
I have a thought on that though, like, because I've tried both those formats with the Archmage, and like, you know, the cheap spells, as you mentioned, that you get from Babbling Brook and all these potentially things, you could play a Flamewalker turn with a Mirror Image and all these little cheap spells and deal like 8 to 10 extra damage sometimes. But with the Archmage, to get the Fireball, first of all, you have to wait till at least turn 8, and then you have to have the right spell, because like if you have a 3-mana spell and the Archmage, then you got to wait till turn 10, and then you only get 1 Fireball out of it. So if you don't have a Sorcerer's Apprentice making them cheaper, often I find the Archmage gets just killed after 1 turn, and I end up getting like 1 Fireball, way more than I get 4 or 5 out of it.
No, I agree with that completely. I think the Archmage is better for better players who can actually plan those turns out. But the other problem that I have with it too is that it de-incentivizes me playing those small spells on turns when I might need to. So, like the turns leading up to it, I'm like, I got to hold on to this Arcane Blast so I can turn it into a Fireball. But really, I should probably just use it and kill something, And so in my version of the deck, rather than de-incentivizing playing those, I'm actually super incentivizing it, because I have Yogg and Arcane Giants. So, like, use up all my spells, man. Do whatever I need to do with them, because they just make all my stuff better later.
Having that card and playing for that card screws up your tempo, because you're using up all these cards that you would normally use to keep tempo and to maintain it, but you're like, well, these will be better late. So now it's becoming, rather than a tempo deck, it's more like of a late game deck with that card. And I don't like it. I don't know that it works in the Tempo Mage as well. As you
I agree with you. I mean, that's why I went with the version without. And I just want to show people that there's multiple ways to build this. But I agree with Daniel. I think try out my version with the Arcane Giants. It's disgusting to play 2 0-mana 8/8s on any turn. It's just great. And also, a lot of times I just play them for like 5 or something like that on turn 5. I've cast so many spells all the way there. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, and by the way, here's an 8/8 on turn 5. Like, that shouldn't happen, right?
Yeah, if your opponent misses a drop, and chances are, especially if you don't have Antonidas, you've been keeping up with what they have been dropping. So if they miss a drop, it's very easy to find room to drop an Arcane Giant later in the game, or earlier in the game.
You'd be surprised how easily the removal that's in this deck lines up with what people tend to be playing. Like, it's very hard for me, especially with the addition of the Mage's hero power, to not be able to deal with boards. And oftentimes when I can't, it's just because they got the God draw start, right? That's why I lost. Like, they just got the absolute sickest, most disgusting start they could, and no one's supposed to be able to deal with that, right? So, but then sometimes you get that too, and you're like, hey, whatever, man, in your face, all your stuff's dead. So yeah, it's just a really, really fun deck. It's very satisfying to play against somebody and just feel their frustration on the other end because they keep playing these minions and you just keep killing them. And then eventually you're like, I'm just going to go to your face. What's up? So yeah, good deck, fun deck. Everyone should try it.
Because you mentioned that you actually took out the ice block, because I know that's one that I just always seem to need and never seem to pull from my tomes. Have you had any trouble? You mentioned like your 85% win rate. Is the 15% hunters? Because seriously, hunters are just wrecking me.
No, actually, I find hunters are easy. Like the shaman are really the biggest problem for me when they get totem golem on turn 1, or when they get like so today I was playing it. I had a guy play totem golem on turn 1. I frost bolted it to prep to ping it on turn 2. I coined the frostbolt or something I can't remember exactly what the sequence was. He friggin' evolved it into an injured blade master on the very next turn. So he turned it into a 4/7 the very next turn. And I was like, well, I guess I lose this game. But that's how I find myself losing games. It's like the Tuskar Totemic, it's the Totem Golem and things like that. Hunter, because they play all these Death Rattle minions that then spawn like little 1/1s. I use the removal on the first body, and then Flame Waker kills the 1/1s and things like that. So I've actually found that I can outrace hunters.
Yeah, I found a lot of Barnes giving them high mains, and I'm just like, I just hate my life.
That's an
happen,
outlier. That's a best case scenario for your opponent. That's not always going to happen. I mean, I can tell you as someone who's been playing a lot of Hunter lately, that does not always happen.
If they rely on that, then you should be fine most of the time.
You know what my Barnes gives me, Jocelyn? A 1/1 Elec.
Just a plain 1/1.
A 1/1 Elec. That's what he gives me. So, well, fantastic. Everyone get out there and try this. And as Daniel put it, shit all over your opponent.
I think that's the technical term, right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. You're very patient.
Looks like turn 7 is the shit all over your face turn.
Awesome. Well, let's wrap this up.
Blur at the next ACT right there.
Let's wrap this episode up with some emails.
Hello.
Hello, it's me.
Hello.
Just quickly, do you get my message?
Yep.
Oh.
Hello, brother.
You can send your emails to tacpodcast@gmail.com. And our first one today comes from us from Zaza, who writes, Dear Foul Fowls, I do appreciate that Hearthstone is a digital card game that can be changed at any time, but there should definitely be restrictions as to when the game changes. What I believe would be best is if the game has a few set points throughout the year for changes. So, every set that comes out, we can expect card changes, bans, moves to wild, etc. But only when new sets comes out. This includes adventures. That way, anyone who is prepping for tournaments can be aware when the game changes. The game changes the most when sets rotate out, so that's the best time to make changes. So if a DreamHack is 2 weeks before a set, anyone prepping can be sure that their decks will be the same for DreamHack, but if DreamHack is 2 weeks after a set, then they can start theory crafting around bans, and since a big meta shift is already expected, it's not the end of the world. It adds far more choices to change the game and get rid of less than ideal cards 3 to 4 times a year instead of once a year, but keeps a structure so it is predictable and not at Blizzard's whim. Yeah, Zaza, I always like consistency and being able to depend or expect certain things, certain changes. The thing with this is, I think the point that Zaza didn't include that I think would need to be added to a system like this is I think Blizzard needs to just give us a better idea or more lead time on when to expect new sets, because at the moment, he ends it with, it needs to be more predictable and not on Blizzard's whim. Well, at the moment, new sets coming out is on Blizzard's whim. Sometimes we don't know until 2 weeks before.
Yeah.
And we said last year at BlizzCon that we liked that, right? You know, when it was like, and it comes out next Thursday. Like, it was crazy, right? So, we like the short lead times on adventures, maybe not sets, but I want a schedule. I'm a schedule person.
I'm going to hold up my finger in a big technical index finger here, Jocelyn. I believe we said that we liked having all of the cards revealed basically in a big dump and not dropped in a drip feed over months on end. I would definitely prefer to have much...
No Twitter voting on which reveal we get and all that crap.
Yeah, I definitely would like to have a lot more lead time to know when sets are coming out. As a matter of fact, I would like for them to set a schedule and stick to that schedule and have that be the schedule every year.
I don't know, and I don't know that this is true for sure, but I've been to the headquarters and I've watched the process for them creating new cards and new game formats and all that. And it's it's a big deal. It's not. So I get that everyone would want to schedule. I wonder how much of that is just a logistical issue of them saying, okay, we'd like to have this done by September 1st, but we're not done yet. We still have to program it, and we're like 2 weeks out. So I think they put themselves in a dangerous spot if they post self-imposed deadlines of when things are going to happen. And then what if they're not ready? What if they haven't thought about all the variables? What if they just can't? Now they're going to disappoint you because they said September 15th, and nope, it's going to be October. This way, when they're done and they know they have a date, they let you know. And I think that's, I get it's annoying to not know, but it also saves them from ever having egg on their face.
Well, and I'm fairly certain, I think it was the launch of Blackrock Mountain that was kind of delayed or felt a little bit delayed. And basically they said, yes, we want to put it out at this time. And then I think Yang Wu actually tweeted out like, we wanted it here and, it's a couple weeks late and we're sorry, but they're such perfectionists that it's very much like, you'll get it when it's ready. We want it to be out just as much as you guys. And so, I mean, I know that that's what they're doing is they're making sure it's ready for us. And so they don't want to tie themselves down to say exact release dates, but a little bit more information would be nice.
Am I the only one that heard her say sorry? Did you guys?
No, we're used to it.
No,
Yeah.
it just completely washes over us at this point.
Yeah, I don't even know.
Out, sorry.
I'm just glad that it was finally another Canadian who teased her for that.
Oh man!
Normally it's these two Americans
I thought you were
right
going to
here.
be on my side, Daniel. God.
I think he is.
Go ahead.
It sounded to me like he was celebrating your pronunciation of sorry.
Yeah. So I agree with you, Dan. I think that is the biggest issue here is that what they're doing is they just want to make sure the cards are right when they put them out. I think, though, what I think I would like to see if I were to add something to this is I would like to see them make small tweaks and balance adjustments, say like every 2 seasons or 3 seasons. And, so that's like a scheduled thing where every, you could, whatever it is. I would like to see them rather than do this thing where they just don't do it until like, oh my God, all of a sudden everything's crazy. We need to change something. Because the player feedback has gotten out of control, right? Like Reddit's gotten so unbearable that we need to change Warsong Commander. Rather than that, like just every 3 months, they just go visit a few cards and just go, well, this is a 2/2 now instead of a 2/3, and this is a whatever, and just small adjustments based on what numbers that they have and what feedback they're getting, and then we know those schedules are coming, and then the card releases, yeah, those happen whenever they happen because I get that, like that's putting out a lot of new cards. Isn't
That's
something
true.
you just do, So
We do have set seasons, so we may not have set card releases, but we have like a winter, spring, summer season. So there's no reason that it couldn't be the start of a new season. Here's your changes going into it. Go.
Yeah, well, and even if they don't introduce new cards, at least the meta still gets shaken up a little bit because people start having to play around with whatever things were changed. They don't have to be huge, Make Call of the Wild cost 9. Then, okay, cool, we're good.
Don't you touch my Call of the Wild.
But just little things.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think this was something we talked about either last week or the week before where Ben Brode was replying to someone's question, and he said, listen, we don't like to necessarily set hard, concrete rules. And while I like that idea, Dills, I think something you and I have agreed on for a while on the show is that we don't necessarily think that they take enough advantage of the fact that it's a digital format and they can make changes more often. But I don't think they necessarily need to say, we're definitely making changes every 3 months, because what if there's no changes that really need to be made? No one's ever going to agree on that. I think any given month, you ask the community, hey, do you think changes need to be made? There's probably like one guy that thinks Raid Leader needs to be changed because he keeps getting bad losses to it.
+1 to everything. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, exactly.
No, you're right. And if that happens, then they say, hey, by the way, everything looks good right now. We don't need to do anything. But I don't know. I like the game feeling like it's freshening up every now and then. And if it's a set schedule, then you kind of know it's coming. And then it's not, and then we're not forced into a set schedule for like anything else because putting out 100 something new cards is definitely an undertaking. I want them to get right. So,
yeah. So, Dilge, you want to take the next email?
Yeah, this one comes from Alan, who says, "Hi there, feisty fowl. I started playing Hearthstone last year after watching the Negreanu versus Elky game at BlizzCon. I am a keen poker player and found it really interesting listening to your podcast and watching streams to find that the vocabulary is very similar. Talking about players' ranges, making assumptions about what is in a player's hand, etc. There are clearly a number of parallels between the two games. With all the discussions recently about the future of competitive Hearthstone, what do you think Hearthstone can learn from online," he says, "poker, player experience, community management, tournament series, etc.? And similarly, what can poker learn from Hearthstone? Thanks for doing a great show, guys. Well, we did touch on this a little bit early on, but I don't think we specifically talked about what changes could be made to, say, the game of Hearthstone based on poker. One of the changes that was recently made, which I thought was great and I think actually had a lot to do with poker, was the opening mulligan now no longer is based on what, when you do it. One guy sees it first, right? So that was a huge thing because obviously you can make a lot of reads based solely on that first bit of information, right? So that was a huge one. I don't know, Daniel, what do you think? Any ideas on what Hearthstone could maybe pull from the poker world?
Yeah, you got an hour? I'll No, there's actually, I know internally there's some things that are being talked about with Hearthstone, because I really believe that Hearthstone has the ability to go mainstream. I think the tournament series that happen now online, they're very, I want to watch this stuff. I don't really have a targeted area or place that I know that, when these tournaments are happening and the times and stuff like that. And there's also a way, what helped poker mainly was character development, right? So I like Ping Ping Ho. I love the side interviews. I like that guy, I'm a Brawl, what the hell is his name? The Greek guy. I'm a boss, like a boss. He had personality, he was engaging, and that made it really, really fun and entertaining. So some crossover there, I think makes sense in terms of from the production perspective. Like I could see Hearthstone on television. Like I could see this game being mainstream enough where you create a broadcast around that. You could even have maybe like celebrity Hearthstone tournament. Right?
You don't count anymore, though. You're a legend player, so you're too good to be in a celebrity tournament.
And then you could have, like what poker could learn a ton from Hearthstone in terms of how it's developed a following within the community that it has. And one of the key reasons why that happens, I think, is because there's so much interaction about constant changes. And poker's become somewhat stagnant in that they don't really develop at the same rate as Hearthstone. Like we've talked about this. Every 2-3 months there's something new happening, or even every week you got a new tavern brawl to talk about. With poker, we've kind of hit a rut where it's just another no-limit tournament, another no-limit. So reinventing itself. And one area they're trying to do that, they Twitch what's called the Global Poker League, which they have some online components and you can stream it and you can watch it live. So they are learning. And I know Alex Dreyfus, who's the CEO of the GPL, he's a big Hearthstone fan as well. And he's actually not stealing, but learning a lot from why that model works and incorporating it into poker and seeing if that'll fly. I don't know if it will, but he's giving it a shot.
I think those are fantastic points. I think you're absolutely right that the storylines are huge, and some of it, like we were very excited about this year because the HCT was changed and everything had to be like an open tournament. But I think we also saw it's like the scenes suffer a little bit because the big names, it was much harder for them to get through. And so you were seeing those guys much less. And not only was it harder for them to get through, they stopped showing up at tournaments because they realized like that there's just, there's the positive EV is terrible for them now, right? Like they spend a bunch of money getting somewhere and they don't do anything in the tournament and then they go home, right? And then they missed out on the money that they would have made if they had been streaming, because streaming is where they're actually making money. So they spent a week not streaming as well as like went to an event and spent a bunch of money to get there. So like you kind of have to have a mix and match, right? Because like poker has big open tournaments, but then also like with the buy-in, you can essentially like force your way into having bigger names. You can also have invitationals. I think you have to do all of those things, right?
Yeah, we faced the exact same problem with poker that you're describing.
Sure.
There was a time in poker where you saw the same faces, and then and a lot more people started to play, so it opened up to a newer audience. The problem was, now a tournament that had 300-400 players has 7,000, so the odds of getting anybody that are limited, so you have to try to make people that no one ever seen before interesting. And I see that happening, as you mentioned, with Hearthstone, where you don't have a regular cast of characters. And there's ways to address that. Like you said, invitationals, an updated ranking system, because right now it's weighted so heavily to volume. Basically, people who just play the most get the most points. That's not really necessarily the best way to do that. One way to do it is to have smaller tournaments that, like you said, within the software or whatever, where you get points that way that get you into the main stage, and then having exemptions for people that have qualified, like in golf. If you've won the Masters once, you can play pretty much every
you get in. Yeah.
So like there should be, because and also with poker, what we've done is we created what the super high roller tournaments. It's 100,000 buy-in. So for 100,000, you don't have 7,000 people. You get 50. You get 50 people. The last 8 people, you're going to know who they are. but that's very important is name recognition. So for me, when I'm watching Hearthstone, when I know a guy, like when I hear that Ping Ping Ho is playing, I get super excited, man. I might be his biggest fan. I'm like number
I
one.
think we're finding that out today. Yeah.
He was like, he did this interview. It was adorable because everyone's giving him shit for bringing Shaman when it was like first class.
It was the worst at the time.
Shaman is good. I can win with Shaman. He's like, I'm going to show people from my country that don't think I'm good enough. I can win with Shaman. And I was rooting for him so hard. He did not win with Shaman, but he made a go of it.
No, I mean, I think you hit the nail right on the head. Like the tournament I was talking about, that's like $1 million buy-in, right? The one drop tournament or whatever. So yeah, you get a super small pool of people. Everybody knows who they are, and the final table is always littered with big names in poker. And then sometimes there's the guy who's like the wealthy businessman who found his way in, and then that's a cool story too, right? So, but you have to still have those names, right? So you get the names, and then you mix in a couple of other guys, and they're the underdogs that those people can root for, or they can have their favorite guy that they, wear a jersey with his name and bring signs and stuff. Like, with like a guy like Phil Ivey, you have like the nice elderly couple that shows up every year and has the signs and loves them, and you need that kind of thing. You need people to be able to like not only have a favorite player but see him all the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Create stars. You promote those stars, and then people have a vested interest in those people. Just like any sport, people don't watch two people playing a sport. They don't actually really are rooting for one of the teams. It makes it less fun. So if I'm watching a Hearthstone match and two people I've never seen before, I may develop an interest, like the Like a Boss guy. Now, if I see him, I'll root for him. But I come in with no rooting interest. But they develop them, and I think what's coming, I think there's some really good things in that area coming for Hearthstone in terms of player and character development that will help create stars, much like the poker model. That's the one thing I think they can do better, and I think they will.
Nice. Yeah. This is a really, really great question, Alan. I'm glad that, this is the perfect timing. I don't know. Did he know that we were going to have Negreanu on, or did we just happen to get this email?
We just happened to get this email. This came in literally a week ago.
So before we even mentioned that Daniel was coming on.
Yeah.
All right. Well, perfect timing there, Alan. You I don't know, go play the lottery or something, because you're picking up signals that apparently from the universe. I don't know what's going on, but thanks for your thoughts there, Daniel. I would love. Obviously, all three of us on the show have been wishing for a tournament mode forever, but. At this point, I don't even think it's so much, because we've talked in the past about ways that maybe they could or could not improve the ladder. And at this point, I don't even think we need to worry about that so much. I think ladder is fine. I think it can stay the way it is. I think getting legend, it is still absolutely an accomplishment and something you should be proud of. But I'd love to see a new mode added that is more one-to-one of an experience from what we are seeing from these esports events. And that to me, I think is what I would like to see added probably the most. As much as I've been kind of harping on how I really want a way to play Arena competitively against my friends or another limited format, I would really just like to get a tournament mode in the game client so that I can have the same experience playing Hearthstone as the professional players that I'm watching on Twitch.
Well, and that's one of the big problems, right? Is that the ladder play and tournament play are totally different experiences.
Absolutely.
And if you're pulling people who play ladder into the World Championship, it just doesn't translate. So I think that there does need to be a way to incorporate tournament play into the ranking system so that we can actually have a legitimate, like, these are our best Hearthstone players in a tournament format. I really don't think it's representative of that right now.
Garrett, you watch these guys in these tournaments on Twitch. You watch them. You want to do what they do.
Right.
So I watch a tournament. Now I want to do what they do. I go to the Hearthstone. I can't.
Yeah.
It's not even available. So what they're promoting as their key marquee event that I want to practice playing, there's no option for me to do that right now.
Right.
They need to change that.
Yeah, I'm sure we're going to get emails. We're going to get tweets, people saying, oh, there's cups on weekends. We're doing a tournament this weekend, and we're doing Conquest, and so you can kind of have that experience. But the problem is you have to go outside of the game, and it's not easy. It is not easy at all. It is extremely difficult. The people that put it together, Jocelyn this weekend, will be working her butt off to get this tournament together, and she's going to have volunteers from our community who are going to be working their collective butts off. And it shouldn't be that difficult. It's a digital game. Add another button to the menu. Come on, let's do it.
Simple.
So,
and not to mention, qualifiers through the client to get to BlizzCon, where you don't have to grind every month, and then you could just win one big tournament and I'm in there. That's the dream, right? So that would be amazing, right? So Dan, you talked about you were at this thing, and then 3 days were spent trying to grind a legend. It would be amazing to just have an awesome Hearthstone experience where you play in a really cool tournament that all happens within like 5 hours, right? And then it's like, cool, I did it. I had a competitive experience playing Hearthstone, and then the next day I went out and did something. It's like, but with Legend right now, it's like, I got to play every day. I got to get up here. And then once I'm at Legend, trying to earn those points, got to get top 100s. Now I got to keep grinding. So it's just like this never-ending grind. And a lot of people who I think consider themselves good players just don't have the time, and they don't have that outlet, right, where they can just have a competitive experience. And so they have to go out, like you guys said, outside of the game to find it.
Yeah,
so
I think that's exactly.
Yeah, you want to emulate the pros. You got to offer that as an option, because if I want to be like a pro, well, what does a pro do? It plays ladder. Well, I don't have, say all those hours to donate, but I can play in a tournament like he plays and see how I do there on a weekend.
Yeah, exactly. Just because I don't necessarily want to log 600 games in a month does not mean I don't want to have a competitive experience. I may have 3 hours on a Saturday. That's how I play Magic. I go and I play in a pickup tournament over a weekend. I have, 3, 4, 5 hours to dedicate, and that's it. That's all I did for Magic that week. And I would love to have that experience in Hearthstone without having to go to a fan site and get in some giant IRC chat and yell at mods.
Yeah. And by the way, it comes down to who's organizing it, and sometimes they're completely incompetent and it sucks and people have a bad experience. So if it was all kind of handled within the software itself, then you don't have that problem either, right? So
yeah, absolutely.
It fixes a lot of things.
Well,
anyway, great question, Alex.
Absolutely. Good job. Again, everyone, you can send your emails to tacpodcast@gmail.com. And that is going to bring us to the end of this episode. Thanks again to our patrons supporting us over at patreon.com/TAC. Do not forget, if you are a patron of this show, to check your inbox for signups for Taco. That is the Angriest Chicken Open tournament we are having it this Saturday. And the finals will be casted by us. Jocelyn, Dills, myself, and they'll be happening no earlier than 8 p.m. Eastern time. Correct, Jocelyn?
Right. So instead of splitting it over 2 days, we've done it all on one day, but we are kind of leaving a little bit of space for a break near the end. So we'll kind of like play out all the games. I think should finish probably around 6 p.m. So it'll give a good kind of 2-hour break, go get dinner, and then we'll come back. We'll do the finals.
Awesome. Very excited. And to the finalists, whoever you may be, don't just raffle stomp each other. Let's not have a sweep, okay? I don't want to sweep in my finals. So.
Yeah, no more 20-minute final streams. Come on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Play super fast too. It's like, come on, guys, this is the finals of the tournament.
We need to get a life coach in our finals.
Think about it.
Yeah. Also, thank you to all of our iTunes listeners who have left us 5-star reviews. If you're out there, if you're listening via iTunes, if you like what we're doing, drop us a 5-star review. This episode, thank you to Ruin388, GovTeach, Chris Bakeen, who said good info and funny. More guests would be nice, though. I don't know, Chris. We got Daniel Negreanu today. Is that good enough for you? Does that make you happy? Seriously, Chris, thank you for the 5-star review. And Oily P, thank you all so much for the 5-star reviews. Check out more about this show and many other podcasts at amove.tv or youtube.com/amovetv. Thank you to our Patreon producers, Declan H. and Peter Williams. You can get our swag. We have coffee mugs, pint glasses, wine glasses at etched.amove.tv. We have t-shirts at shirts.amove.tv. Go check that out. Follow us on Twitter at TAC Podcast and catch us live every Tuesday night at 4 p.m. Eastern on twitch.tv/amovetv. Daniel Negreanu, you are our guest. Thank you so much for joining us. Where can folks find you when you're not guesting on Hearthstone shows?
Well, I mean, on Twitter at Real Kid Poker, and I started my own little podcast, poker-related, called Full Contact Poker. Talk about the business side of poker. Some of the stuff that we cover here, it's like, actually, there's a lot of crossover because it's not about poker, it's about the business side of poker and kind of how to get your name out there and different things like that. And I talk to powerful people in the industry and stuff like that. So, yeah, I do it about once every 2 weeks or once a month. I'm not like you guys diehards.
Dude, I miss Poker Road Radio so hard, and I miss like the Two Jacks guys. They're not really well. I guess Huff is not, but Stapes is still doing stuff.
Not live. Yeah.
But that was one of my favorite podcasts, man, for so long.
I just taught Stapes how to play Hearthstone.
Did you really? Sweet.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Anyway. And Daniel, I want you to know you have been a great source of bonding for my father and I, because he is a raging poker fanatic. Never really got into video games, wasn't a huge nerd or anything. He obviously supported me being a nerd while growing up, but I've been poking him about Hearthstone, and today I got to text him and be like, "Hey, Dad, guess who's coming on the show today?" And he kind of lost his mind a little bit. So thanks for being that little point of connection between my dad and I. So Jocelyn, where can folks find you when you're not on the Angry Chicken?
You can find me on Twitter and Twitch. I'm at Joss Plays. You can also join me right here on AMove TV every Wednesday night, and we do the Gamers In at 8 p.m. Eastern.
Dills, how about yourself?
On Twitter at Willie Dills, twitch.tv/WillieDillsSF, youtube.com/WillieDillsSF. But mostly, and I'm a broken record right now, you will find me hanging out with my puppy. Lots and lots of evenings. I'm going to try to get a short stream in today. I'm going to go pick him up. This is the first time in my apartment, though, so I need to let him get used to the surroundings before I throw him up in front of the hot lights and show him off to the world. But, yeah, there will be a short stream where people get to say hi to Iggy, so that'll be cool. Looking forward to that.
Oh, that's great. Don't forget to check out our sponsors. Once again, harrys.com. You can go there right now and get a free trial set sent to you. All you have to do is pay for shipping. You can cancel it anytime. It's just like World of Warcraft subscription or Netflix. And use the code TAC at checkout. That's TAC because you'll get your free trial set, but you will also get Post-Shave Balm added to your order for free for using the code TAC, and you'll support the show in the process. Follow me on Twitter at Garrett Art. Everything else is at amove.tv. Check out Jocelyn and I spoiling World of Warcraft Legion on Embrace the Spoilers. That's the new thing that's been going up lately, so check that out. Other than that, that's going to do it for this show. Daniel Negreanu, one more time, thank you for coming on, and until next time, job's done.
Job's done.
Job's done.
Job's done.
Yes!